Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 685 of the DBR Podcast, the Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason Evans here for your listening enjoyment. I'm joined by my buddy, Donald Wine. Donald, we got a special guest today, don't we?
We do. It's the good thing about having this little bye week because you got to have Joe on the other day, and now we have a great writer who has his pulse on everything Duke basketball. Has done it for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly. 14 plus years of covering the Devils. Steve Wiseman of the Raleigh News and Observer, the Durham Herald Sun. Welcome to the DBR Podcast, man.
Jason, Donald, great to be with you. Thank you for that kind introduction. Boy, 14 years. Wow. I do have a few gray hairs, but that's okay. I appreciate it.
Don't worry, I shave mine off so that I don't have to see them. So you've caught me on a nice day. We're going to talk about, obviously, Duke. We'll talk about the ACC. Let's first focus on the 2024-25 Duke Blue Devils. And just to start, your overall assessment of this team so far this season. We're in the later part of January. How's this team done in your eyes so far?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to pick any nits with it, right? It's 16-2, 8-0 in the ACC. Obviously, the end of the Kansas and the Kentucky games you want to have over again. But I mean, to me, that was part of this team's learning process. That's what Jon Scheyer set that schedule up for. And I think the way we're seeing Cooper Flagg and the team play now, that if they had those situations again, I think they'd probably be handled better, just by what we've seen lately. But anyway, they weren't a great offensive team when the year started, and so it took a little while to get that going. And now I think they're on a streak of 7 games in a row of shooting 50% or better. So you can't get much better than that. That's really good. Defensively, we knew that's what the strength would be of this team. It was from the day one of this foundation of this team. John and the coaching staff said that's what they were going to be, was a great defensive team, and they have been. They're among the one or two or three best defensive teams in the country, and we've seen a little bit of slippage here last couple of weeks. I think that's a lot to do with Maliq Brown being hurt, but we'll talk about that more. But just those are my general impressions of what we've seen. That they're a complete team on both ends of the court, and they're up there in the handful of teams that can win it all in April, which is what the goal of this team was.
You mentioned Cooper Flagg, and of course, Cooper Flagg has been the guy who this team has been constructed around. This whole roster has been constructed around elevating his game, and in more ways than one, he's met or exceeded the hype that preceded him. But for you so far, what has been the most surprising thing that you've seen about his game?
Well, I knew that he was an effective distributor, a really good teammate. And you wonder when a guy comes in with that kind of hype, if the idea of I have to go out and score 25, 30 points a game gets into their head. And we didn't see that from the very beginning. He was, multiple assists every game. And that's been part of it. He's only become this kind of high volume scorer of late because his game has developed into that. He's making his free throws, he's hitting his 3-pointers a little better. So that to me stood out because so often with these young kids, especially when they come into college, they get carried away with the hype a little bit, and he has stuck to his game. He's gotten better. He's gotten more comfortable. I knew that would happen. I was confident. I should say I was confident that would happen because of what we'd seen of him. I saw him at the AAU level, and then at Mount Verde, and more importantly, this summer when he worked out with the Olympic team, and what we saw from him and I talked to people who were there and talked to John. Day one, he looked a little uncertain. He was just kind of trying to feel his own way and trying to see what this was all about. And then day two, we saw all those highlights, of him making these great plays left and right against these, all-time greats, And he absorbs things. He learns. And then sooner rather than later, it comes out pretty strong. And that's what we're seeing now with his offensive game, how he's really developed. So those are my thoughts on Coop so far.
Hey, Steve, really quick, just staying on Cooper for a second. As we mentioned, you've been around for 14 years. You saw Kyrie, Marvin Bagley, Jahlil Okafor, Zion, Paulo, great upperclassmen like Grayson Allen. In your time closely observing the Duke basketball team, and I know his season isn't done, and hopefully the best is still yet to come. Where do you think Cooper falls among all those really great players who've been at Duke the past decade and a half.
Yeah, he's on the Mount Rushmore. He has to be. If he leads this team in every category, which he's doing right now, and is on pace to do for the year, that's incredible. And see, like, I know it's easy to say, oh, Zion was the player of the year. And Zion was a different type player, and we all know that. Like the dunks that Cooper had against Pitt, like Zion did those every game, right? So
Right.
that was a different thing. And Zion
Every
was a good
game.
passer. We saw him do that, right? But he didn't run an offense through like Cooper does. And so, they're both going to be. I mean, I think Cooper's going to be the player of the year. I think he's really got a good chance to get that national player of the year. Zion got that. Jahlil Okafor got that. Okafor was a true old school big guy, right? That's a different type of player than Cooper Flagg. Jabari Parker played a little bit, on the perimeter. Obviously, did that. Ingram did that. Kyrie, boy, again, we only saw him for a little bit of time. And I was on another pod earlier talking about this, and this is the best freshman year. So I said, well, Kyrie's on that list too, because I know what I saw those first 8 games before he got hurt, and man, that game against
Yes,
Michigan
exactly.
State and Draymond Green and all that stuff, that was something else. So I don't want to forget Kyrie, because he brought some special talents in there too. But Cooper's in that conversation. He has to be, particularly if he leads them in all the categories, which I don't see him not doing. And Final Four, national championship, you got to get to that level to get it done.
And the other thing, everything you're talking about kind of is, no offense, is offense. Cooper's probably the best defender of those guys we're discussing.
Correct. That's right. It's a very good point. Very good point. And he allows them to do things on defense as a team because of his skills, because of the ability to switch and all that stuff. He can do that all 5, but he can guard anybody on the court. And Zion, as great as he was, couldn't do that, right? And
Right.
Okafor couldn't do that. So yeah, that's a big part of it for sure.
You were talking earlier about Maliq Brown and his injury, and how Duke has kind of had to adjust with him being out last week plus, and of course they're going to have to figure out what to do while he's on the bench for an extended period of time. We'll say we don't know obviously how long, but what have you seen from this team, and how do they need to continue to adapt? Because as you mentioned, there's been a little bit of slippage that can be attributed to the fact that he's not on the floor, and some of the talents and attributes that he brought to the floor has caused kind of a change in defensive shape. How do they adjust to kind of recreate in the aggregate a Maliq Brown, who I know at the beginning of the year we wouldn't be saying this, but how instrumental he's kind of been as part of this, just stringent defense?
Right, because one of the great strengths of this Duke team is that switching ability, which comes from Cooper. But when Malik's on the court, in particular, they do it at all 5 positions, and it's very hard to run an offense against a team that's effectively playing a switching defense and not having any gaps. And so what we've seen with him out of the game or out of the rotation is, like Notre Dame, we saw score 78 points. Nobody's scored that many points against Duke this year, right? So when you talk about the Kansas and Kentucky games, that's the teams that or Auburn with Brown. They scored that many, but most teams haven't. And then the Boston College game in the first half, they shot 58% in the first half. Boston College did. Now a lot of that was dunks and layups. It was that they were getting paint touches in the lane and getting close, and we didn't see much of that when Malik's on the court, because you can't drive and you can't move in offense that way when you're switching like that. Now they tried to mix in some more switching with Kaman. Right before Maliq got hurt there, they did that some. And that's something where we talk about Cooper growing as a player. Kaman is growing as a player too. And he has to get used to doing that. Now that Malik's been out, I haven't seen them do that as much, because maybe they don't, they're not ready for Kaman to do that, as full time like Maliq does. He's still growing.
Well, and I think it puts him in more foul danger potentially, and you can't afford to have him out as much without Maliq as a backup.
Very good point. And Pat Gongba is playing more, but yet, as we saw against Boston College, I mean, Kaman had 4 fouls, and Gongba had 3, and so then he had Mason Gillis at the 3s at the 5. So that's where they're switching. To get back to your original question, Donald, I am getting back there, believe me. That's how they're changing. Is we're seeing Mason play a lot more at the 5, because they can do the switching at all 5 positions, even though he's a smaller at 6'6", a 5. I think that's going to be important as they play Wake Forest. I don't want to get too far ahead here, but that next game with Wake Forest, with Hildreth and Salas, they're going to need to be able to switch it a lot to effectively defend Wake Forest. And so I think that's what they're going to have to do.
If you had a guess, we're going to speculate for just a second. If you had a guess as to when you think Maliq Brown would be healthy enough to come back, when do you do that? Or when do you think that will be? And is it a point where you kind of see, hey, circle this game as an opportunity to kind of reintegrate him into the rotation, to give them time to kind of regel as a team? Because that, with a guy with extended absence, that usually has to occur to get back to 100.
It does. And you want to get him in, early to mid-February at the latest, because then you're getting a month from Selection Sunday and the ACC tournament and everything. I think that's reasonable. I know last time we talked to Jon Scheyer on Monday, Maliq had not returned to practice at all. So you have to get to that point before you can start building up toward returning to play. And, we're going to get Jon again on Thursday for a press conference, and we'll get an update from him there. But that's why I think, it sounds like, if he hasn't been on the practice court yet, then you're at least a week or two away from him getting back, being able to play a game. So, but the good thing is, I haven't seen him with a brace on. I've seen him. He was in Boston. He made that trip. A lot of times when guys are hurt, they don't make the trip because they don't want him to travel. But the fact that he did, that's a good sign. So I don't think we're talking about like he might be out for the year. That's not what's in the cards here, I don't think.
Just before the Auburn game, there was a couple of changes that Jon Scheyer made. He first moved Caleb Foster to the bench. He started Sion James. And then we saw, of course, Isaiah Evans into the rotation in a huge way with those 18 first half points against Auburn. What about those moves? And that's kind of how we've played with Isaiah very much in rotation, Sion in the starting lineup since then. What about those moves do you think sparked the team and kind of, changed the way they played to how they're performing right now?
Sion is a real leader on this team, and that's hard for somebody that comes in from the outside to be, especially, Caleb had been here last year and was part of that rotation. He does the podcast, so he's got that, good vibe going with everybody. But Sion is such experienced, obviously, from all his time at Tulane, and such a mature player and such a physical player, and he's just calm all the time. Except for when Cooper has that dunk and he, what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Moment.
He wasn't calm there. But anyway, that's okay. But he's calm in tough situations, and they needed more of that. And it goes back to why Jon did what he did in the offseason with bringing, he saw a need. We've got to have older guys. We have younger guys, but when we get in these games, like in the NCAA tournament, the Tennessee game 2 years ago, and NC State, the games they lost, they needed somebody to take control and be calm and get things going. And so that's where I think that's what's helped this team. Sion, it took him a little bit to get in there for him to realize what he had, for Jon to realize what he had in Sion. It's like, okay, he's got to be in starting lineup. He's got to be part of he was in the rotation, but he had earned being in that starting 5 for sure. And then to Isaiah, he's so mercurial, with when he shoots and he's on, he is on, and he is, he had a lot of fun in Boston the other night, kind of taunting the crowd a little bit after he made his 3-pointers. We all saw that on TV. You guys saw it on TV, but he's just he's an energy and an energy infusion on the team, and he is getting better on the defensive end. That was what kept him from playing more, and that's not a knock on anybody. That's just the way it is sometimes with freshmen. But he's a great scorer when he gets on, and he's going to have another game. I'm confident, like he did against Auburn. I don't know who it's going to be against. He kind of did it in Boston a little bit the other night, but that game was out of hand. He's going to have other games like that this year where they're going to need him to hit those shots, and that's a big part of this team for sure.
Last question I got on the Duke side. We're a little more than halfway through the season. Obviously, the back half coming, and we look at this team, as you mentioned, just undefeated in the ACC. Is there an Achilles heel to this team right now? And if so, what is that Achilles heel that they need to work on the back half?
Yeah, if what they had to do the other night with Mason at the 5, with Pat and come on in foul trouble, if they were playing a better team, that would have been a bad situation. Like I don't know how much you can, Mason's will do all he can. But if he's going against, if it's Johnny Broom or something like that, like they'd be impossible, right? So, and then luckily there aren't that many players like that in the ACC, but they need to get Maliq back. I mean, that's just to be at their best, to be a team that can win the national championship. They need to have Maliq back, and I'm confident they will. But so yeah, that's one thing. A few weeks ago I was talking about the offense and the 3-point shooting. That seems to have been fixed, and I wonder still about Khan. He's still not consistent, and he had that great game against Miami, and then Boston College he couldn't make anything right. Tyrese had a couple games.
The past week was the story of inconsistency. I mean, literally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Tyrese, same way. He had 2 games in a row. The Notre Dame and Miami games, he had 3 points total. And then he had a pretty good game against BC. So those guys got to get a little more consistent, even out their games. But again, I said earlier, about nitpicking. That's kind of nitpicking. You asked me to nitpick there. That's what I'm doing. That's where we are with this team. They are a high level talent team that can do anything they want to do this year with their talent. So, but yeah, that would make things better if they know what they're getting from Cooper. If you knew that Khan was not gonna have a 1 for 9 or 1 for 8 shooting night or whatever it was lately, and Tyrese that way. If they were more kind of middle of the road, kind of with what they're shooting.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, folks. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit about the ACC, and I'm going to ask Steve the bold question: are the Blue Devils going to go undefeated in the conference this year? We'll have that after a quick commercial break. All right, Duke fans, from the football playoffs to college and pro basketball to the rush of hockey, it is all happening right now, and you can get in on all the action of the sports you love at DraftKings Sportsbook. With so many sports, there's almost unlimited opportunities to place your first bet every day. Try betting on something simple, like picking a team to win, or something a little more sophisticated, like who's going to score the most points. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, pick your team, and place your bet. And here's something great for all new customers. If you bet $5, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. $5 for $200. That is a great deal. Make every day game day with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code DUKEBB. That's code DUKEBB for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating, well, easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. I mean, look, everyone has busy lives, and some are more on the go than others, which makes many days not knowing when your meal breaks are or spending time figuring out what's out there. Factor takes the guesswork out of meals. With 40 options on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. And here's the best part. The meals are delicious. I love the Factor meals. It's delicious food, it's nutritious, there's easy prep, and it caters to your schedule. It's a no-brainer. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/DukeBB50off and use code DukeBB50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code DukeBB50off at factormeals.com/DukeBB50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Hey guys, want better performance? And when I say performance, I'm talking about all areas of your life. If the answer to the above question is yes, try Joy Mode daily to support healthier blood flow, improved heart health, and enhance your athletic performance. Expertly formulated and backed by science, it's proved to improve performance by 50% in just 60 days. Simply mix a pack with water and feel the effects within 45 minutes. Take control with Joy Mode. Get a boost anytime, anywhere, and never miss a beat. Start a subscription and save 30%. Keep your performance at its best without any interruptions. Join the over 200,000 men who trust Joy Mode to boost their performance without any side effects. So if you're looking to take your game to the next level, visit tryjoymode.com and use the code DukeBB at checkout to get 20% off a single purchase or 30% off a subscription. That's tryjoymode.com and use that code DukeBB for 20% off a single purchase and 30% off subscriptions. All right, we're back with Steve Wiseman, the Duke beat writer for the Raleigh News and Observer, the Durham Herald-Sun. He's covered the Blue Devils for a long, long time. Steve, you have seen ACC sports, we said, for 14 plus years. Have you ever seen the conference this bad in men's basketball?
That's a hard no. It's not even close. And I've never seen the gap between the best team in the league, Duke, and everybody else. And then that's one part of it. And then the other half is the back half of the league, where now it's 18 teams and you have like 8 or 9 of them as we speak here are at 500 or below for the season. And there 8 of them are below 100 in the net, the old RPI. We never would have seen that before. Never. And it's going to cost, obviously come Selection Sunday, talking maybe getting 4 or 5 teams in at best. I know yesterday, I think SMU had kind of snuck into some projections maybe as a 6th team, but that's going to be hard. But anyway, that would be tops. And that, that's not, we're used to 7 or 8, 9 teams getting in, right? So, and they're hoping for 6. Whew. Things have changed dramatically. And I know it's, we talk about a lot of the reasons, the coaching changes that have happened, Boeheim leaving, Larinaga leaving. Those are teams that Syracuse was supposed to be, when they came in, one of the top 5 teams in the league every year, and they haven't been that. Pitt was, when they came in from the Big East, they were always, a top 4 seed nationally in the NCAA tournament, and they haven't been that. Capel's done some better work with them lately, but they're still not there yet. So, those are things that are holding this league back, or teams that have the resources and the history to be able to be what they should be, and they're not being that. So, yeah, it's a tough deal. And, but to your other question about going undefeated in the ACC, that does make it easier. So
wait, you're that's coming later. Hold on.
Okay.
Tease. You hinted at this a little bit, but I want to drill down a bit more into ACC teams that you think have really underwhelmed this year relative to expectations. Are there 1 or 2 teams that you just sort of go, man, those guys are supposed to be way better than this?
Well, yeah, Miami, I thought. Matthew Cleveland, I don't know what happened to him. When he left Florida State and went to Miami, he just lost it, and I thought that with him and Nigel Pack, they still had some pieces from that, Final Four run that, I didn't see them completely bottoming out and being the worst team in the league. And NC State, I thought they could build off last year. I really thought Keats, could get that. I thought, Brandon Huntley Hatfield was a good guy inside. I thought with O'Connell back and Ben Middlebrooks, from that run, Marcus Hill could do some things on the perimeter. And I saw them play. I happened to cover their games in San Diego when they played Purdue and BYU. I was out there with Duke because they played Vegas. I went on to San Diego, and I was really surprised that they hadn't made the progress I thought they had, because now they're kind of regressed to where they were right before their ACC tournament run, right? And that's disappointing for them and for their fan base and for the conference because, again, you need to have those teams that can, 7 or 8, 9 teams that can be on the, in at least on the bubble, and they're not even close to that. So those are the two that kind of jump out to me.
Do you feel like is Kevin Keatts back on the hot seat? How much goodwill does one match? And it was a magical month. It was unbelievable. How much does that buy him in terms of runway, so to speak? Because he was very much in the hot seat before March of last year.
Absolutely, he certainly was, and I think he's got enough goodwill to survive this year. I don't think they're going to make the move after this year if they don't make it. If they're not going to make the tournament. I do think that bought him an extra year or two because, they had been so long waiting for that to happen at that program. That fan base was so starved for, not only the ACC was been, since '87, and then getting back to the Final Four since '83. So, as our columnist Luke DeCock wrote, they don't have to talk about the past anymore. They didn't have to. They finally had something to talk about. Now, even though this isn't going as well as they want to, they can still. It's not the deep past. It's like right here. We were just in the Final Four last year, so I do think that'll buy him a little bit of maybe a year or two that he wouldn't have had otherwise.
And speaking of coaches on the hot seat, is Hubert Davis on the hot seat yet? Is it maybe a little bit warm? Carolina, honestly, especially after they lost to Wake, this week, you got to feel like they're on the bubble. And if they don't turn, they don't have a lot of chances for impressive wins. They got games against Duke. I think they're at Pitt, maybe
Yes.
at Clemson, but not a lot of chances for good wins. If they don't pick up wins in those games and they miss the tournament, that'd be twice in 3 years, I think. I mean, you talk to me about where Hubert and where Carolina are.
Yeah, definitely not where they want to be. That's for sure. And I don't think if they miss the tournament, they'd make the move this year. I don't think. I think that again, he built up. He's an alum. He was the pick. He was a former assistant. So there's all that going on. His first year getting to the championship game and the wins they got over Duke at the end, those carry weight over that, and they should. That's no question about that. And then last year they bounced back from not making the tournament, and they were number 1 seed. They were. They only made the Sweet 16, which was disappointing, of course. Then, but that was okay. That's the kind of year you can be okay with. So it's going to be next season. Next season is going to be the linchpin year, I think, for him. Whether they make the tournament this year or not. If they make the tournament, they're not going to be a very good seed. They're going to be a 9 or a 10 probably at best, the way they're playing. So they're not set up for a deep run. It would be an upset if they did that. Of course, they were an 8 seed when they went to the Final Four, whatever it was, 2022. But anyway, that's another matter. But
Don't remind me.
yeah. Yeah. But I do think he's going to survive this year. I think whatever's going to happen in the offseason, next year is going to really be he's going to have to do something next year, something special, something of the Carolina standard, which they have and they've earned.
Related to that, do you think, and we've had this discussion on this show before, very quickly, do you think that the investment in football that UNC is doing with the arrival of Bill Belichick, do you think that's going to affect any timeline on Hubert Davis's part?
It very well might. And it may be him going, to Bubba and saying, hey, wait a minute, I see what you're doing with football here. Don't forget, we're Carolina basketball. And maybe Bubba will say, yeah, I know. I used to remember Carolina basketball. I don't see that right now, but you're not playing at that level. But anyway.
You just gave the meme, Lord, I see you've done for others and I want that for me. That's basically what he's going to tell Bubba in the office. Huh?
Thank you. Yes. So they are investing in football as all colleges need to right now. That's where that's the key sport for the future of college athletics. It's all tethered to football. For better or for worse, it is. And so he definitely will need some answers about what's going to happen with basketball. Bubba says there's enough to support everything at the level that they're accustomed to. Bubba Cunningham does.
Do you believe that?
We'll have to see. I mean, of course he has to say that now. He has to, but now he has to do it. So let's see him do it.
All right. So I want to, I was originally on a course and we diverted a little bit when we started talking about the coaches. I'd asked you about the teams that the ACC that had underwhelmed. Which teams do you think have really surprised you this year as we get back to our ACC conversation? Which ones are doing, significantly better than would have been expected?
Well, kind of like football. SMU, for sure. I didn't know what their transition would be like. Andy Enfield's a well-known, respected, accomplished coach. But still, you're coming into this league from the American, and that's a big jump. And although not as big as it used to be, because the conference isn't as good, but they're, they've been pretty good. Now, when they played the better teams in the league, they've gotten pounded pretty good. So that's not a good look. But they've done better. And I got to go to the game in Dallas when Duke played out there, and it was a great atmosphere. They were excited about Duke being there. They were just it's about a 7,000 seat arena. So it's hard to recruit at the big time level there. But Andy's done a good job with that team. They're on the verge of the bubble, which I didn't think they would be coming late January.
All right. Now I'm going to ask the question that you tried to answer a moment ago. Given where this conference is, given the fact that Duke's already played Louisville, who looks like the second best team in the conference, really, we've got a game at Clemson, we've got the 2 Carolina games. Hard to see other games on the schedule that are, anything other than a massive upset for Duke to lose. Do you think that they can go undefeated?
Well, I think they can, and I think the one that's going to jump out to me, and the ones you mentioned are certainly important, but this Saturday's game at Wake is now sneaky big. Like, Duke hadn't won there the last 2 years. Since Scheyer's been the head coach, they haven't won at Wake. It's funny, he won as an interim coach. Remember, Coach K was sick during his last year, and he missed the game at Wake. Yeah. Mm-hmm. John coached that one, and they won. So anyway, but Wake, because Maliq Brown's out, and again, Garden, Hildreth and Salas without Maliq will be difficult. And they're 10-0 at home. I think they've won 26 of the last 27 games at home. They've made Wake Forest a tough place to play. And so this is a big one because in fact, I think, and it's probably sacrilege, but tougher than the Carolina game should be, right? Frankly, I mean, and I know you throw out the records and all that stuff with that, but because that game always delivers, and it does. But I think Duke is so much better than Carolina this year they're going to be a heavy favorite in those. Something would have to go wrong really for Duke to lose those games. But the game at Chapel Hill, the game at Clemson, and the game at Wake, those 3 are the ones that they could trip up. But I think the chances are really good. And
give me a number. Go ahead. I mean, you can pull it out of the air if you want, but what's your percentage? 30%, 50%, 70%?
Oh, it's more. It's like 70. Yeah.
They're going to go undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I love to hear it. I love to hear it.
They may trip up. I mean, I just, men, not machines. They're kids, all that stuff, right? So projections don't mean anything. But you look at the Ken Palm thing, like it's all in the 80s or 90s. The only ones that are below 80 are the game at Wake and Clemson. And then Illinois. Then we're not counting the Illinois game, right?
No, we're not. No, we're not. Yeah. Okay. That's. I think everyone agrees that's the toughest game left in the schedule in all likelihood.
Oh, no question. That's the toughest game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the game at Madison Square Garden. No question.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I had a text conversation about 2 weeks ago with Brendan Marks of The Athletic, who covers Duke and the ACC. Yep. And I said to Brendan, I was like, "Hey, what are the chances Duke goes undefeated? Do you think like 20%?" Now, this was a couple weeks ago, so fewer games have been played. And he writes back to me and he goes, more like 2%. So I like your odds better than his. Let's just put it that way.
We can agree to disagree on that. Brendan's a good friend of mine. So we've talked about this kind of stuff. And so, yeah. And again, they could have a game where they shoot, 20% and lose a game. I mean, that's going to happen, but I just think they have too many weapons and there's nobody that's going to challenge them except for those few games we just talked about. So that's it.
All right. So my last question, whenever we have someone on who's close to the program, been in the program, we ask them for a good Coach K or Jon Scheyer story. Now I know that you're not literally in the locker room and stuff like that, but you've been there a while. You've seen a lot of stuff. You got anything you can share? Maybe that you wouldn't write in a column. I don't know.
Coach K still, I don't know if he still walks across campus quite a bit. He's still on campus a lot. And
yeah,
I've walked out of football press conferences on Mondays, and he's walking. Like he'll walk by, he'll stop and wave, and he'll keep his stride going. And he's very adamant about that. And so anyway, that's the first thing that popped into my mind was something recent that I saw of him, that he's still around, he's still on campus. He's still very much a part of things. And people, I know he's retired and he's sitting, his new seats are over there, near the grad students, on the opposite side of the band. So he's still coming to games and everything. And so anyway, that's the one that popped into my head. I'll probably think of some more now that you kind of put me on the spot a little bit, but
well, you can come back some other time and give us whatever other ones you might happen to come across. Steve Wiseman, Raleigh News and Observer, man, we really appreciate it. Appreciate your coverage. I appreciate the fact, for folks who don't know, if you're in a press conference, and I've been in many of them with Steve, he always gets the first question. No matter what. It's both etiquette and protocol that Steve Wiseman will ask the first question. So, by the way, do you ever feel pressure?
A little bit, yeah. It's you ever heard of Helen Thomas, the famous?
Oh, of course, yeah, yes.
That's the Helen Thomas treatment. She always got the first question of the president. So that was pressure. We're talking about basketball. This is okay.
I don't know, Coach K and like the president. That's they're kind of equivalent to me.
Yeah, I will say. Can I real quick tell you one?
Yeah.
The press conference where Grayson Allen against Elon over in Greensboro, the trip against it with Steven Santa Ana, that was the one where it was like, okay, this is more than just like a basketball game. We got to talk about some serious stuff here. And so that was one where I knew it was on me. It was incumbent on me to ask a question about what's going to happen here. What are you going to do? Is it so? Just to revisit the history a little bit there. That was important. It was my job to ask that, and it had to be asked, and it was, that's what we had to do. So anyway, that's one that popped into my head too about that pressure.
Well,
a little bit.
And I mean, I know I've been on the receiving. I've been in 1/50th as many press conferences as you have, but I've been on the receiving end of Coach K sort of being like, really? That's what you're asking me? Yeah. He could be prickly. He could be very prickly.
Especially. Go ahead, Donald.
It's important because one, I do it on the soccer side too. It sets the tone for the press conference, and it kind of gives them in a way a heads up of, hey, here's what's coming, right? Because it's coming from you. But the respect factor is what it always stands out to me. Is when you get that first question, is they're like, we know it's going to be good. We know Steve is going to lead us in a good direction, so we appreciate you doing that because we can't get to those press conferences. So from afar, we're able to kind of see you, kind of establish the groundwork for what's going to be the story. And that's the important thing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you reading my copy and following our work. And I appreciate the work you guys do. This is a great podcast. I appreciate being on.
You're very kind, man. Thanks a lot. All right. That's going to do it here on the latest episode of the DBR podcast. Our thanks to Steve Wiseman, the man who covers Duke basketball like no one else does for the Raleigh News and Observer. He is Donald. I am Jason, and you're listening to him now. It's the Duke Band. They're playing us out and taking us home. I'll see you at Clemson. If not, I'm trying to figure out another game I'm going to get to. It's turned out to be, I thought I was going to get to several, but it's turned out to be harder than I thought. So
yeah, I understand.
I might be up at the game in the Garden because I live in DC, so it's 4 hours one way, 4 hours the other. So I might be at the game in DC at the Garden.
That's going to be memorable. That Saturday night 8 o'clock game. It's
going to be a big one.
That's fun.
Well, and I think it's a super important one for because the ACC sucks.
Yeah.
I know that Duke proved it against Auburn, and we had close games. Beat Arizona. The resume is great, but I still think February against a good Big Ten team. A loss there could really a loss there hurts way worse than a loss in the ACC, in my opinion.
No question.
Well, it also sets it up where in the room they can go, Duke was dominant in the ACC, and they beat Auburn, and they beat Illinois, and they beat Arizona on the road, and
solidify.
They were a turnover away from beating Kansas and Kentucky. This is a really good team. Right.
Because we're talking about, they're going to be a number one, most likely number one seed. We're talking about number one overall seed. If you can
correct
that win, and if you happen to trip up and lose a game at Clemson or Wake, you need to beat that Illinois team to kind of make up for that. Yeah, you have that opportunity, which is one of the reasons why they scheduled it when they did.
Yeah,
because they kind of foresaw the ACC was going
to. It's the old school feel. When you had that St. John's game or Georgetown game, like in the middle of the ACCs, they kind of break up the monotony a little bit.
Right. I like it. I hope they keep doing it.
Unless Auburn goes undefeated, which is almost unfathomable in the SEC is strong. Unless Auburn goes undefeated, Duke's going to be the overall number one, I think. unless they lose that game to Illinois. I think that game they could lose at Clemson and still be the overall number, in my opinion,
if they beat Illinois.
if they beat Illinois.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I don't want to keep you too long, but it depends upon how that game goes too. I mean, if it's a tight game either way, okay.
Yeah.
But if
Right.
it's if because they're really bad
If it's-
shooting, not and Illinois beats them by 12 or something, I don't see that happening. But
Yeah.
it could, and that would factor in there as well.